Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gene Therapy Candid Conversations. I'm Brendan Hayes, and I'm the Director of Education for Innovative Therapies at NHF. We're very excited to have you join us today, and you're all in for a treat. It's been a fantastic week, and this is one of our very last sessions, but it's going to prove to be an awesome one. Now more than ever, it's essential that our community take an active part in learning about both new and existing treatment options as they make their decisions about their care alongside their providers. A few housekeeping issues. This is a live session. Please add any questions that you have to the chat, and the panelists will be answering those at the end of the session based on the amount of time that we have left. James Uetta from NHF will also be on the live chat with us as well. Our panelists today include Mr. Jim Rippey from Conway, Arkansas, Mr. Lance Rice from Indianapolis, Indiana, Mr. Michael Joshua from Prairieville, Louisiana, and Mr. Garrett Hayes from Plano, Texas. I'd like to introduce Dr. Singleton, who will be our moderator for the session today. Dr. Tammy Singleton is the Chief of Pediatric Hematology and Director of the Hemophilia Treatment Center with the Mississippi Center for Advanced Medicine. She received her medical degree from Louisiana State University School of Medicine, New Orleans, completed specialty training in general pediatrics at the University of Miami School of Medicine, Jackson Memorial Medical Center, and training in pediatric hematology oncology at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine National Cancer Institute Combined Fellowship Program. Dr. Singleton is board certified in general pediatrics and pediatric hematology oncology. She provides care for children and adults with hemophilia, VWD, and other rare bleeding disorders. Welcome, Dr. Singleton.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. And I have to say, probably like a lot of you guys, I have really enjoyed this virtual conference. I know many times I participate in virtual conferences more recently, and you don't really know what to expect, and I haven't been disappointed at all. So thank you, and kudos to NHF, and for all of you guys for really making this conference really what it is. But I have to admit, though, that this particular session is, don't tell anybody, but it's my favorite. It's my absolute favorite session, and I think that here shortly, you will be able to figure out kind of why, and I hope that it'll be your favorite session as well. So we have a great cast with us today, and I'd like everybody to start off with just a brief introduction. Just go ahead and say your name and how you're being treated for your hemophilia, what kind of hemophilia you have, first of all, and what therapy you're currently on. So Garrett, why don't we start with you? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Garrett Hayes from Plano, Texas. I am a 22-year-old, and I am a severe hemophilia A patient, and I've been on the same standard factor replacement therapy for almost over a decade now. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Garrett. How about Michael? How about you?
Hello, my name is Michael Joshua. I'm 19 years old. I have severe hemophilia B factor IX deficiency, and I'm on an extended half-life prophylactic treatment.
All right, Lance.
Hi, my name is Lance Rice. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I am currently on a subcutaneous injection therapy.
Fabulous.
Yep, and I have hemophilia, I guess, severe A.
Very good. And last but not least, Jim.
I'm Jim Rippey. I'm a 64-year-old. Have hemophilia A. Just had gene therapy about a year ago, and so far that's the last treatment I've had for it. I haven't had to have any factor replacement. I was on factor replacement on demand before then.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you to all of you guys for being here today. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. Garrett, I'm going to circle back to you. So we have a fantastic and very heterogeneous panel, here today, as you guys, can hear. Garrett, you're on standard half-life factor replacement, have been sounds like for most of your life. There are other options out there. There are extended half-life products, there's subcutaneous products. As Jim just mentioned, there's gene therapy. Why don't you just give us a little bit of an introduction in terms of what your thought process is, and how is it with you being on factor replacement and the same product for many years now?
Sure. So I think it ultimately comes down to quality of life in terms of wanting to stay on a product or switching. And I was born at a really fortunate time in terms of the norms of care in our community, where prophylaxis was the standard treatment of care. And we had really good products that worked. So I've definitely been interested in to see the different developments in therapies in our space that since I've been growing up. But ultimately, I've been fortunate enough to been on Profi since I was a small child. So I've had really good outcomes, and I haven't had bad outcomes to where I'd want to seek a new therapy. Of course, there are shortcomings to standard half-life therapy that you have to keep in the back of your mind all the time. But as long as I keep doing well with what I'm doing and able to be active, I am ultimately not going to want to jump ship quite yet, but still keeping an eye on what's coming.
And I think that just thinking of, the many patients that I see, over the course of a year, and people that I talk to every day, I think that that's something, or that thought process, and that's something that many people can definitely embrace and identify with. However, there is another hand, as you mentioned, right? So Lance, why don't you kind of pick up where Garrett left off? So how did you make the decision? What inspired you to move from factor replacement therapy to the subcutaneous therapy? And tell us a little bit about that journey for you. Like, how did that happen? What things did you think about?
I've been fortunate with, I guess, any style of therapy. I've used plasma therapy and standard therapy. And the quality of life has always been, it has always been good for me. It's, I guess my biggest fear was the half-life. So I always tried to figure out a way to improve a poor half-life. Mm-hmm. So by, I guess, learning about the subcutaneous injections, I learned that the half-life could be, no more. So I took I guess I took the leap just because I knew that I was going to be improving myself for the long haul.
That's really cool, and very and very interesting, and certainly a fact that a lot of people may really kind of zero in on. So hang on to that thought, because that's a really, really interesting thought. Again, a lot of you out there may embrace that concept, and you may have other questions and concerns. So make sure, by the way, as we go through this, if you have questions, hang on to those questions. You can also type some of those questions in the chat as we go along. But we certainly want to get to your questions as you develop them, as these guys kind of tell their story right today. Okay, so Michael, so tell us a little bit more about your journey and your thought process. So you're a slightly different case. So you have severe hemophilia B, and are you thinking about any alternatives to factor replacement therapy, or have you thought about it, considered it? What would you need to see? What would you like to talk about? Just tell us a little bit about what you're thinking right now in terms of where you'd like to be.
Okay, so yeah, I am interested in gene therapy just because any product that has an extended half-life and can lower my risk of spontaneous or breakthrough bleeds and keep my factors level high always grasps my interest. And I don't like the infusions as well. So with gene therapy, they say it would knock out the risk of infusions. So that's one of the number one main attraction right there.
Very good, very good. So Jim, seems like, you took the leap here. And gene therapy may be kind of in the back of the minds of a lot of folks out there. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you decided, or how you came to make that decision. What did you maybe talk about with your hematologist? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I guess I started the process back in 2017 looking into it. It was probably closer to the end of 2017 that I feel like I had enough information to move forward. I was looking at all the different companies that had products in clinical trials. And so I was spending a lot of time reading information. You can just go to clinicaltrials.gov, and no matter what, if you're looking for another therapy, that's an interesting place to be, because anything that's out there, not just gene therapy, they're all running clinical trials now. So that's an interesting place to start your process. But I guess I contacted the treatment center that I go to. Actually, Christmas Day on 2017, I sent my physician request. He wasn't my physician at the time. About the gene therapy, and sure enough, he replied by 9 o'clock the next morning. I was shocked, but my bleeding episodes, I was always on-demand therapy, not prophylactic. I grew up in a different time period than these guys did, where I was on fresh frozen plasma or cryoprecipitate, and then moved into more advanced therapies later on, but never prophylactically. And so my bleeding episodes were getting out of control. About every 3 weeks I was having a bleeding episode. So about the time I would heal from one, another would start. So I was looking for something that would reduce the burden on my wife primarily, and myself, just because I was having more and more problems. So that's why I looked into gene therapy, but I looked into everything that was available at the time. And gene therapy, I thought, at my age, I'm 64 now, that if I was going to do this, I might need to do it now.
Very good, very good. I love hearing the stories and the perspectives. Again, if you have any questions as you're hearing some of this information, don't hesitate to go ahead and type your question in the chat. So there is a question I want to get to that someone has, and it sort of coincides with you, Lance. Because I was gonna go to Mike and then to you, but I'll double to you first. So the question is, in general, that I'm going to answer is subcutaneous therapy for factor VIII deficiency patients or hemophilia A patients. Is that on demand, or is it used for prophylaxis? And so the answer is the available subcutaneous therapy for patients with hemophilia A, that is used for prophylaxis. It's a subcutaneous injection. Patients use it on the 3 different schedules that are possible, but they use it for prophylaxis only. If there is a breakthrough bleeding episode that the patient experiences while they're on it, then another agent would need to be used for that on-demand or that breakthrough bleeding episode. So if you're a hemophilia A patient without inhibitors, you use regular factor VIII. If you're a patient with inhibitors historically, then you can use one of the bypassing agents. But the subcutaneous injection is used for prophylaxis. So Lance, kind of getting to you in answering that question about the subcutaneous therapy. Why don't you share a little bit in terms of how your life has changed? In whatever way you'd like to share it. How has using the product, kind of impacted your life? Did your bleeding change, or anything that you'd like to share related to what happened once you changed?
Before I started the product, I was Profi, and I just didn't follow Profi, so I experienced bleeds on a regular basis. And I guess the one thing that I noticed, and I still have a hard time I guess, accepting is the fact that you don't have to rely on the factor anymore, really. It's allowed my joints to heal. I lost 15 degrees in my elbow before I started the product, and since haven't had any bleeds since I've started the product, it's actually healed back to its full range of motion. I think the wear and tear that's already been done is more noticeable, but at the same time, the healing's been amazing. What else? I guess
Let me ask you a quick question while you're thinking about that. What about any positive impacts you think, like on not just you but also on your family when you changed? Anything that changed for the better that you could kind of think of that you didn't really anticipate?
The first, I guess the big one was, I guess, for my family, they tend to worry a lot, even though it's everyday life for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotten rid of a lot of worry. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest one for me is that it's allowed me to accomplish tasks that I couldn't do before. Mm-hmm. I work a pretty physical job. I landscape and mow grass, I guess 5 days a week. And before the sub-Q injections, I couldn't survive an entire week. Now I'm lasting months without any injury.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it's, I mean, for me, it's put everything to a halt.
Well, Lance, I have one more follow-up question, just because I think it's something that's important. It's because it's something that you mentioned. You said, and I'll kind of paraphrase sort of what you said, but you said it was hard for you to not think about using factor. I don't think it's exactly what you said, but something to that effect. Like, what did you mean by that?
Well, before this new product, when you would have a bleed, you were kind of, I mean, the regimen stayed the same. It was rest, do your infusions, and then eventually you'll get back to living your normal life. Now, it's, I mean, you really have to put effort into getting to having a bleed.
I see.
So, you know, the smallest bumps before that used to be bleeds, mm-hmm. Now are just, you know, sore little mishaps, mm-hmm. that don't really need attention.
I see. So you're sort of saying, and I think I hear you saying, before, every little thing you thought you would have to use factor for, it was kind of hard to let that go, or recognize that you didn't need to do it like that anymore, sort of. Yeah.
It's made me more aware of the condition, mm-hmm. but that awareness has also, I guess, made me more just mind boggled on the fact that, you know, it works so well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I have a question from the chat that I'm going to fold into a question for you, Jim. So there's a question regarding the eligibility. and how do you qualify to be a candidate for gene therapy? So I'll let you kind of answer that, in your words, and I'll maybe elaborate a little bit. So two-part question. One, how did you go through the process of kind of qualifying and determining if you were eligible to participate in a clinical trial and for gene therapy? And then the second question would be in terms of like the overall number of tests. How did you facilitate that? How did that work? Did you find it cumbersome? Tell us a little bit more about the testing and the qualification part of it.
Well, most of the qualifications that I saw on the website for clinicaltrials.gov are very similar. So this, as far as how I qualified, actually it took a while. I had one of the qualifying tests was a test called a fibro test, which checks liver function. And I had one reading alpha-2 macroglobulin that was very high and was very concerning, and it kind of kept me out of the first study I was applying for. And come to find out, we did some follow-up testing with a fibro scan and an ultrasound, which was perfectly normal. So what I found out from a personal standpoint is the only thing we could come up with is as you age, which wouldn't apply to a lot of people, that particular enzyme can get high. And it was holding me back from being able to get into a clinical trial. So I guess it could happen quickly for you, or it took me, I guess, almost a year to get through the process of seeing a hepatologist, making sure everything was fine, and getting a letter written saying there's nothing wrong with his liver to qualify for it. But what I saw, because I looked at every gene trial that was available at the time, and I highly recommend people do their homework and find out all the pros and cons of gene therapy, because at the moment there are both. And you're going to have to decide individually whether it's good for you. But yeah, there was some extra testing that I had to go through just to get into the study that, if you don't come through squeaky clean, then don't give up. You might be able to still get in, but it may take longer to get in.
Right. And how about those tests once you had gene therapy? Like how frequent? Like how was that facilitated? Was it seamless? Was it cumbersome?
It was slightly cumbersome, but I think I had 26 blood draws in the first year, but most of those were facilitated by a home health nurse coming to my office. Actually, I would have them come, because at first it was every or twice a week. They would come and draw quite a bit of blood, and it tapers off during the 1 year process. From twice a week to every other week, and then once a month. And so it's a tapering process once they see how you're responding to the gene therapy. But and I guess I had, 5 or 6 trips out of state to Madison, Mississippi, where I was getting the trial, or I had the trial, the gene therapy. So it can be awkward on your lifestyle, but for me, I thought it was worthwhile.
Excellent. So I'll just piggyback on the question again in terms of qualifications for gene therapy. So there are various companies that are sponsoring clinical trials for gene therapy. And so every single clinical trial is not the exact same. So when Jim mentioned those qualifications and eligibility, there are multiple questions that have to be answered. Depending on the trial, they certainly want to know about your heart function, your kidney function, your liver function. They may also want to know about any antibodies in your blood to the vector that's being used. So sometimes if a viral vector is being used, if you've been exposed for some clinical trials, certainly not all, but for some clinical trials, they may want to know or determine that your blood is negative for those antibodies to the agent that's being used to facilitate gene therapy. So there are two places you can sort of follow along with what Jim said. You can always go to clinicaltrials.gov to look at that eligibility criteria, but I always highly encourage you to make sure that you have a conversation with your hematologist to determine if this is something that, you know, is right for you, and you may have some additional questions that you want to tease out as you go along the way in terms of that eligibility or qualification sort of aspect of gene therapy. So very interesting information, Jim. Thank you so much for that. Garrett, how about you, Garrett? So we've talked before, and it is so awesome to be on this panel with you again this year. Folks can never get tired of hearing your story and hearing the way you share it and your perspective on your journey as well. So I have a couple of questions. First, I'll start with, again, you put a lot of thought into how you manage your hemophilia and your life. And I'd love it if you share with folks later, you know, kind of what you do. You're such a cool dude. But such a cool dude. So I know that you put a lot of thought right into this. So along those lines, I also know that you're putting a lot of thought into some of the data and what you would need to consider seriously one of the other alternatives. So what would you need to see from a data perspective before you would consider trying the subcutaneous therapy? Or what would you need to see from a data perspective before you would seriously want to consider, you know, gene therapy for you, and throw in any other things about you that are important to you, you know, as to how you would make that decision?
Sure. It's hard to put a number or a number of years on how much data I would want from these existing therapies. But the big picture is, as a hemophilia patient, my goal is to kind of live as a normal life as possible. And that's why I want to keep up to date with treatments that are available so that I make the best decisions I can make for myself and my family. And we've seen a lot of growth in terms of what's available just in the last 10 years. Specifically with the sub-Q products most recently, I was never super compelled by the extended half-life therapies, just because the extension was so modest. And if you use them as advertised, which is like 2 times a week versus the 3 times a week, you're actually at a trough longer. So I never really wanted to take that switch, also because I was, you know, doing really well on what I had with the standard therapies. But I think the sub-Q is a really promising option. Same thing with gene therapy. And we're getting a lot of personal stories and anecdotes now from the sub-Q products that I think are really important. But at the same time, that sub-Q product wasn't available for non-inhibitor patients till pretty recently, I think fall 2018. So those anecdotes are important, but ultimately they're not science at the same time. So I really would like to see long-term data on patient outcomes for these drugs before I would personally want to switch, just because, you know, a lot of people had to go through a lot of things to get the therapies that we have now that I've been able to use and thrive on. So it's tough for me to make that jump, given that I've been able to be successful on what I'm on. But maybe like 5 years-ish of patient outcomes on these products. I mean, it's hard to put a number on it, like I said, and if my condition changes, then things might change as well. And then gene therapy, of course, is a little bit different because it's still mostly on a trial basis. So same thing with seeing good patient outcomes with that, but it's alarming at the same time, because you can see different results in patients on the same trial. So it's really tough to, you know, take that risk, take that jump for gene therapy, because you really are not exactly sure what you're going to get. But I think at the same time, gene therapy is probably the most promising, you know, hemophilia treatment modality that I've seen. And we need people like Jim to be on these trials so that we can really develop this for the next generation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Garrett. And you definitely just didn't disappoint with that answer. I just love hearing how you think, just so thoughtful in general in terms of how you approach this. And you definitely represent a lot of patients out there. And again, I highly want to encourage, all of you as you're listening to the different thought processes and the different therapies that even a patient like Garrett, his story, being happy where he is, but still thinking very methodically about what's going out there in the hemophilia world today. Have conversations with your hematologist. Bounce this sort of back and forth. It's a very individualized decision. You are a very unique person, and your relationship with your hematologist is where you need to kind of close that circle and continue that conversation. So, so incredibly interesting. Okay, Michael, along the lines of some of the same questions I just threw out there to Garrett, I totally understand what you're saying, that you would be interested in gene therapy and motivated to receive gene therapy, participate in a clinical trial maybe for gene therapy, because of the impact that it could have, on your life and how it could be life-changing, much like what Jim sort of said. Is there anything in the data or anything, regarding any of the outcomes that you would specifically be interested in or have any concerns about at all? If there's a morsel of doubt somewhere, something that you'd like to see, and it kind of matters, but you would be okay with it, or what do you think?
For me, I would want to know the success rate and the possible side effects that comes with the gene therapy. More so the side effects, just to see what I would have to add to
Right.
my life.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. So again, I think that also definitely you're speaking for a lot of folks out there, right? In terms of just that one concern. Jim, I'm going to hop back over to you. There was another question from the chat, as well as I have my own question. So again, 2 questions for you. Not fair, right? That I'm giving Jim 2 questions at one time all the time. Okay. So first, you mentioned that you did your homework, right? And so you went to clinicaltrials.gov. You sought out the clinical trial, wanted to get more information from the center that you go to now in Madison. Was there anything else in terms of, or any other support that you had in terms of your educational journey in understanding gene therapy, kind of before you got to that point?
Well, I pretty much lived on the internet for a long period of time. I put about 250 clock hours studying gene therapy, immune system responses, took courses on immunology. I wanted to know exactly what this was going to do to my body, because you can't, it's not reversible. Once you do this, once they put it in you, then you're on your course, a different course in life. And I was also in a trial which I think has at least been halted for a period of time. I was one of 5 people that had this particular form of gene therapy, and the only person that did not have an immune response, as far as I know. And so my levels went up higher than the other people that were in the study. And so also, and this might be a good question for you, because you might want to address the risks of a negative reaction or response to gene therapy, like when you have an immune response, because from my understanding, it really limits the possibility down the road of other forms of gene therapy. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend people not only look into all the different companies that are out there if they're interested in this, but you need to ask serious questions about, what have the responses been so far with the people that have been in it, and if I have a negative response to the gene therapy, how's that going to affect my current or future treatments?
Excellent, excellent. So Jim clearly identified the internet and using that really as a big tool and a big vehicle, and sitting and putting in the time to really provide more educational opportunities and resources for himself as he was making the decision to participate in the gene therapy clinical trial. So I want to turn to the rest of you guys really quickly and ask you, how or what educational resources did you use? Like, where did you get your information outside of your hematologist and your HTC? Was there anywhere else that you went to? Was it, lectures or the internet or reading materials? Like, what did you do to find more information? Lance, I'll toss that question to you first. Outside of talking to your HTC and your doc, where did you find information? And if you didn't find it, what do you think was missing?
Actually, I also was prone to using the internet. It's where I got all of my information, and I've done that.
I think we lost you for a second. Did you hit mute?
There we go.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's always been a go-to, the internet. It's again, I think it's more of, I guess, how you search the internet. You kind of have to know what to look for and, what's credible and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, tons of details.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about you, Mike? Outside of your HTC, did you also rely on the internet or resources on the web or lectures, or what else was out there in terms of support for you from an educational standpoint? And can you think of anything that's like missing, something that would be important for you to support you with more information?
Yes, for me, I first saw it in a magazine article, and me and my mom were talking about it, and that led to us looking it up on the internet and just getting more information about it. But they were missing the success rate and the possible side effects, which is something that I want to know for every product I get on.
Excellent. Did you guys use, I'm just curious, did you guys use any of the resources from the National Hemophilia Foundation website, or was it just, you just used everything?
We just used everything. We just wanted more information as much as possible, since it's something I've been interested in for a while.
Excellent, excellent. How about you, Garrett? I know again that you're very, methodical in your approach in terms of, making decisions and gathering data. So outside of your HTC or your hematologist, what resources did you use in terms of education and filling in those gaps? And do you think that there's anything missing?
Yeah, so just like everyone else, it's been a little bit of everything. A lot of the internet. I think the advocacy organizations like NHF are a great resource because they stay really up to date with what's going on, and they are able to make the what comes out in the literature really digestible to patients. I'm not a scientist, so it's hard to go on PubMed and see what's happening with that. But things like that. I think there are a lot of great sessions at that I attended at the NHF conference last year and this year about explaining how products work to kind of make them more digestible for people and to understand how these products work. I think even sales reps are good because they're really educated about their products. You just have to know that you're who you're talking to at the same time. But they're a good resource as well because they're very knowledgeable about their product and how it compares to other products. You just kind of have to keep in mind who you're talking to. But ultimately, it's a big mix of everything. There's a lot of information out there, and it's kind of, you can get lost in it really easily. Mm-hmm. And then finally, just talking to people in the community. I think just talking to people is a really great and easy way to see what works for people, what doesn't, and that's something really easy to tap into. I can't think about a specific resource that could be missing. But kind of like what Michael said, I'm really interested to see, the numbers on, factor levels in gene therapy trials and the sub-Q products as well. So just things along that line.
Excellent, excellent. I love that. Thank you so much for your responses, all of you, about that. Okay, Jim, you're up again. Here comes my two-part question. Okay, so one question from the chat is, folks want to know, how often are you seeing the hematologist now? So first of all, tell us, how far are you out, from gene therapy, and how often do you see the hematologist now? And then I'll ask my second question.
Okay. Well, I'm about a year, almost in 2 months out from receiving gene therapy. And, it was, there were quite a few trips and, blood draws and things like that. But I'm in the 4-year study now. I transitioned from the first year study to 4 additional years. And I believe it's on a quarterly basis. Yes, it's on a quarterly basis because I'll be going back in September for a 3-month checkup.
Okay.
So that's basically what program I'm on right now.
Okay. So after about a year, then you're now going on a quarterly basis. Okay.
Correct.
Here's another question for you. There is a lot of concern with folks out there in terms of what happens with factor levels in general, with people after they have gene therapy. Mm-hmm. So tell us generally, like, what category after gene therapy do you kind of fall in now? Are you like a patient that has normal factor levels, in that 50 to 100% range, or generally, or are you more like a patient with mild disease, whereas previously you were a severe patient? Where do you kind of fall now, if you don't mind?
Yeah, well, I was 1 to 2%, and now I'm either. Actually, it's kind of interesting because your factor level fluctuates, or at least mine has, pretty drastically on gene therapy after gene therapy, but it fluctuates to a little bit below normal to mild range, and so it's been high enough to where I haven't had any bleeds at all in a year and 2 months. But and my activity level has skyrocketed too. I've exercised on a regular basis, which I couldn't do at all. I was lucky to just walk during the day, work and come home and prop my feet up. But that's all changed. So that's been a blessing. It's been a nice transition to become active. But the one thing that I guess one of the things I was really surprised at is pain disappeared after 3 days. I was in chronic pain, and that totally has resolved. And that was over a 25-year probably of chronic joint pain. But factor VIII level does continue to fluctuate, but it does in people that have that don't have hemophilia too.
Excellent. So I don't know. I'm so excited to hear everybody's story and all of your just different perspectives. And today, just as in the title, we're just having a candid conversation with each of these guys representing a sort of snapshot into the hemophilia community, and hopefully providing some information for all of you out there who are listening that would just be food for thought, because these are their perspectives. They're telling their story. I am a hematologist and a director of a HTC, and I'm certainly not here today providing any medical advice, but it sure is an honor and a privilege just to hear this information and facilitate these guys kind of telling their stories and to answer any questions that you have out there. So I think that we may have a few more minutes, right, in terms of questions. Do we have any more questions in the chat that are out there?
Dr. Singleton, I think I did ask you one. I sent you a text, and it's the one regarding, it's interesting. We're all curious. Do you guys interface with your chapters? And then for you, Jim, now that you've had gene therapy, what kind of resources would you need from your chapter moving forward?
Well, actually, I haven't been involved in a chapter. I was kind of one of those people that wanted to deny the disease and live as normal as I possibly could and not think about it. And so I wasn't really involved in a chapter, well, since I was a child. I was active, early on in life, but not as an adult. And so, but I think there's a lot of information. When I was doing all my research, I got a lot of information from the NHF website and their weekly, or not weekly, I guess it is weekly updates. Well, actually, daily, almost daily, I get texts from there or emails. And so that, I think, being active is a good thing. And so I think you could get a whole lot of information just by the news updates that come from National Hemophilia Foundation and probably other organizations too. I have a grandchild that has hemophilia, and so I'm always forwarding the information to my daughter who had a child with hemophilia. So it's an exciting time because there's so many options that weren't there as I was growing up and as a young adult. It's really exciting to see all the potential therapies that are on the market today. And I was looking into other therapies too, not just gene therapy, but this one interested me, and if it didn't work out, I was going to look into one of the more subcutaneous options.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for sharing all of that. I mean, I feel like we need another hour. Like I could just talk about this and listen to you guys kind of talk and share your stories and answer these questions. I mean, I think we could stay here longer. Look, NHF, look, just a wink, wink. I think next year we need a longer period of time. This has been great.
I agree, and it's so funny, Dr. Singleton. You and I said the same thing last year. We said we could. Hours. In fact, last year we had our Facebook Live and you and I kept talking, which is something that we do very well, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, from an NHF perspective, I want to say thanks to you guys. Absolutely amazing content. The chat blew up. My phone blew up. Obviously, people really are excited to hear from you guys. So unfortunately, we have to wrap up and say goodbye. I want to let you guys know that you're going to be receiving an evaluation and email tomorrow. So we would appreciate you completing that. And attendees that can receive the conference bag and goodies sent to their home if you are among the first 500 individuals to complete 10 session evals and visit 8 booths. This is, we're winding down. This is one of the last sessions of the day. And again, thanks to all of the folks out watching today. We really appreciate you. And I wanted to let you know that if you would like more information about gene and innovative therapies or bleeding disorders in general, please visit the virtual NHF booth. These sessions that are being recorded and the live sessions that are being recorded are all going to be available through the end of the month. So please make an effort to go out and enjoy this great programming. I also wanted to let you know that we're having a really fun event tonight, guys. We are doing our award session. It's probably starting like right now. And then our final night event is going to be absolutely fabulous. We're going to have games and music and dancing, and we hope to see you all there. Again, thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.